We rolling?
Yeah.
Okay. Rabbi Sai, we're on DAF Chaf Gimel Amid Aleph. We're at the two dots. And we've switched gears, and we have switched from Eved Ivri to Eved Kanani. Eved Kanani, as we know, is a Gentile who is sold into servitude to a Yisrael. He is chayiv in a certain scope of mitzvahs. Generally speaking, he is chayiv in the same kind of mitzvahs that women are obligated in, mitzvahs aseh, shelo hazman grama, but he's exempt from mitzvahs aseh shehazman grama. And the topic of our Mishnah that we're going to be analyzing further today is a machlokus between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim as to how an Eved Kanani acquires his freedom, the mechanism whereby he is emancipated. The Mishnah had said that it could be done through either kesef or shtar, and the machlokus between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim is who actually is handling the money and who actually is handling the shtar. So if you go back to the Mishnah, Rabbi Meir had said that he is kona es atzmo bekesef al yedei acherim, that the way that an Eved Kanani acquires his freedom is if other people handle the money, meaning that other people pay the adon for the Eved's freedom. However, when it comes to a shtar, he himself receives the shtar in order to be freed. The Chachamim say just the opposite. The Chachamim say that when it comes to kesef, the Eved Kanani handles the money directly and delivers it to the Adon, and with a shtar, it is done only through, or at least it seems that way, it is done through other people receiving the shtar on his behalf. And then, uvilvad, but say the Chachamim that even though we said that the Eved Kanani can handle the money directly, it has to be other people's money. It can't be his own money. Now, the simple understanding of that is that we have a principle of Masha Kana Eved Kana Rabo, that whatever an Eved acquires for himself, he really has acquired it on behalf of his master. So if an Eved takes his own money and tries to emancipate himself, he's really taking money that doesn't belong to him. And that's why other people can free him. They can give him the money, but they have to make sure that it's not his money, that it's still their money when he emancipates himself. We're going to get more clarity on this idea, but just to make sure that we are clear on the machlokas, Rabbi Meir says with kesef that it's got to be al yedei acherim, that it's got to be other people delivering the money. With the shtar, it's got to be through himself. And the Chachamim say just the opposite, that with kesef, it's himself delivering the money, and the shtar is received by other people, by a third party. Let's understand the machlokas better. The kones atzmo bekesef, so bekesef al yedei acherim in avalo al yedei atzmo. So the Gemara makes an inference from the language of the Mishnah that it says, according to Reb Meir, the money has to be delivered by a third party, but not by the Eved Kanani himself. So b'maya skinan. So what kind of case are we talking about? Ilay mishalomi daito. If you're going to tell me that the Eved is unaware that he is being emancipated, and a third party comes forward and just delivers cash on his behalf, so mechde shamana leila Reb Meir da Omar chovhu laEved sheyetzim miyad rabo lecheros. 1 second. We've established in Maseches Gittin that Rabbi Meir holds that it is a liability for a slave to be freed. Why is it a liability for a slave to be freed? You'd think if anything, he would want to go free. No. When an Eved Kanani, we create a liability for him because, in one sense at least, because if he's enslaved to a Kohen, he's allowed to eat the Kohen's truma. If once he goes free, he cannot eat the Kohen's truma anymore. That's one liability. A second liability is that when he's a servant in his master's house, he gets to have a free wife, and it can be as promiscuous as he likes with that wife without any limitation. Once he goes free, he doesn't have an automatic wife, a shitcha given to him. He's got to go out in the world and start dating and find a wife and pay for her and stuff. That's not so easy. So that's a liability for him. So v'tanina zachin la'adam shelo b'fanav vein chavin lo ela b'fanav. So, and we know that there's a principle that when it comes to creating, you can create an asset or a benefit for a person without his knowledge, but you can't create liability for a person without his knowledge. So how is it possible that we're talking about a third party delivering the money to the Adon for this slave's freedom without the slave consenting to it? So elapshita midaito v'hakamashmalan al yedei acherim in al yedei atzmo lo. So you must conclude that our Mishnah is talking about a case where the Eved is cognizant and endorses his emancipation. And still the Rabbi Meir says that the money must be delivered by a third party and not by the Eved himself. Alma ein kinyan la'Eved below Rabo. So what's the reason? It must be because Rabbi Meir holds that it's impossible for the Eved to acquire money independently of his master. And therefore, we can't give him the money to give to the master, because whatever money he takes into his possession will immediately revert over to the master, and then he's not buying his emancipation. So ihachi ema seif. Well, if that's the case, look at the second case. Bishtar al yedei atzma, al yedei atzmin, al yedei acherim lo. That Rabbi Meir also said that when it comes to being emancipated through a shtar, the Eved must receive it himself, and others cannot receive it for him. So v'imi daito al yedei acherim my lo. And if it's with his consent, why can't someone receive the shtar on the Eved's behalf? Now maybe you'll tell me that when it says that other people, that the Eved has to get the shtar himself, it's not to exclude other people getting the shtar for him. It's saying that even if it's by himself, that's okay, meaning that both other people can take the shtar and the Eved can accept the shtar. And what is the Chiddush? The Chiddush is that you might have thought that there's a sequential process, that first he gets the shtar, which we're going to see in a minute, someone holds that way. First he gets the shtar, and then he acquires his freedom. Well, if it works sequentially like that, then he can't receive the shtar himself. Because if Masha Kana Eved Kana Rabo, if an Adon, by giving the Eved the shtar, it's like he's giving it to himself, because the Eved is still completely his property, right? And if he only goes free after the shtar is delivered, so then how could the mechanism possibly work? So therefore, maybe the Chiddush is not only can he give it to other people to acquire on behalf of the Eved, in which case the Eved is certainly emancipated, but the Chiddush of Reb Meir is that it's not sequential, but it's actually simultaneous. That simultaneous to the Eved receiving the shtar, he automatically is freed, and therefore it is a valid mechanism for him to acquire his freedom. Maybe that's the Chiddush, that it works for shtar. For kesef, it's only when other people deliver it. But for shtar, the Eved can have someone else receive it, or he can receive it himself. But wait a minute, says the Gemara, v'halo tani hachi. But if you look at the Brisa does not explain the Mishnah that way. D'Tanya, bishtar al yedei atzmo v'lo al yedei acherim divrei Reb Meir. The Brisa says explicitly that he can only acquire the shtar himself and not via other people. Now, why should that be? If the Eved is aware of it and he's consenting to it, why can't someone act as his proxy and receive the shtar on his behalf? So that's our dilemma, and now we're going to come up with a totally different interpretation of the Mishnah as a result. Amar Rabbi la'olam shalom midaito. Really, you want to know what? Our Mishnah is where the Eved is not aware of what's going on, and he is being freed by the master without his consent. V'shayni kesav hol v'koni le bal korche makni le bal korche. What about the problem of ein chavin la'adam shelo b'fanav, that you cannot create liability for someone without his consent? The answer is that when it comes to emancipating a slave, that's different. Why? Because kesef, the mechanism of kesef, how did the master acquire the slave in the first place? He bought him. Did the slave have a right to choose whether to be bought? No. So that same mechanism of kesef can be used against his will to free him as well. So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, ihachi shtar nami. Well, then why doesn't it work for a shtar as well? You can acquire an Eved Kanani through a shtar against his will, so why can't you emancipate him against his will with a shtar? Why does he dafka have to receive it himself? The Gemara answers, hay shtar l'chud v'hay shtar l'chud. The Gemara says because the shtar that was used to acquire him is totally different. It's a different mechanism from the shtar that's used to emancipate him. While it's true that the shtar used to acquire him can be done against his will, nonetheless, it's a different shtar. It's a shtar of emancipation. And that's what's being used to free him, and that can only be done with his consent. So the Gemara says, Hachanami haikas b'lechud v'haikas b'lechud. Well, then make the same argument with the mechanism of kesef. When you acquire a slave against his will, that's one mechanism of acquisition. The mechanism of emancipation is a totally different mechanism. So just because you can acquire him against his will doesn't automatically indicate that you can free him against his will using the mechanism of kesef. So the Gemara says, no. Tiva miha chadhu. Abaya says like this. When you look at a writ of acquisition versus a writ of emancipation, the texts on the paper are totally different. One is I hereby acquire the slave, and one is I hereby emancipate the slave. Two totally different texts, two totally different mechanisms, and therefore you can't compare the two. But when it comes to kesef, it's the same green cash, right? In both cases, money is money. So the same money mechanism that you use to acquire him against his will is the same money mechanism that you can use to emancipate him. And since the acquisition can be done against his will, the money mechanism that is used to free him can also be done against his will. And therefore, it makes sense why the Mishnah says that when it comes to money, someone else must do it for him, even against his will, because he can't do it himself, because Masha Kana Eved Kana Rabba, because whatever he acquires, his master automatically acquires. When it comes to a shtar, then the shtar, he can acquire his freedom only through his own knowledge, because a shtar can only be, the mechanism of shtar can only be done with his consent and not without his consent. Since he's not aware of whether someone else receiving the shtar for him, that's not going to work. And Rava Amar, Kesef Kabbalas Rabo Gormalo, Shtar Kabbalas Acherim Gormalo. And Rava says, the reason why kesef and shtar are different in this respect has nothing to do with the fact that they're two different shtaros and cash is cash. That's not the explanation. But the reason is because let's look at the parties who are involved in the kesef versus the parties who are involved with the shtar. How does a slave go free using the mechanism of kesef? You deliver cash to whom? To the master. And since the master is the main player in this mechanism, so it doesn't matter whether the Eved is aware of it or not. It's all dependent upon the master's decision. Do I want to free him or not? But when it comes to a shtar, who's the main player in the acquisition of the shtar? It's not the Adon. The Adon is giving the shtar. Who receives the shtar? Yeah. The Eved. That's why the Eved has to consent to it. Right? That's the reason why. Not because of this argument that Abaya made before, because of the difference between shtaros versus the similarity between cash, but rather because look at the players. Look who's receiving the object. If the Adon receives the kesef, so then it's up to the Adon to decide, even if the Eved doesn't want. But when the Eved is receiving the shtar, he has to consent, and that's why it can only be done through himself and not via others when he's not aware. Let us go on. Now we've explained Rabbi Meir. Let's now explain the Chachamim. They say the mechanism of kesef, just the opposite. It can be done by himself, and when it comes to freeing a slave through shtar, it's done via others. So bekesef al yedei atzmo and al yedei acherim lo amai. So you're telling me what? When with kesef, he himself has to deliver the cash to the master, but other people cannot do it on his behalf. Why not? Nihi nami de shalomi daito. Even if you're going to tell me that, like we said with Rav Meir, it's the same with the Chachamim, that it's shalomi daito, that he's not aware of what's going on. But mechte shamanu lehula rabbanan darmi zuchusu sheyetzi mitachas yad rabo lecherus. But we know that the Chachamim argue with Rabbi Meir in Maseches Gittin, whereas Rabbi Meir says it's a liability for a slave to be freed. The Chachamim say, no, it's not a liability, it's beneficial for this person to be a free man. 100% beneficial, the Chachamim say. That if you ask 10 out of 10 people, they would rather be freed, and even if that they're denied truma and they're denied a free shivcha, they would rather be free and go out on life on their own. So what's wrong with other people paying the Adon money unbeknownst to the Eved? What's wrong with that? So Betanya Zachan Ladam Shalo B'Fanav Ein Chavan Lo Elo B'Fanav. And we know that you can create benefit for a person without his knowledge. So we don't understand what the problem is. So one answer could be is that when the Chachamim say that he delivers the cash himself, means that even he can deliver the cash by himself, plus other people can do it as well. The Kamash Balan Yesh Kinyan La'evid Below Rabo, and the Chiddush of the Chachamim is that even though other people give him the money, it's nevertheless possible for him to have an independent acquisition, independent of his master. And that's a big chiddush, because we just said that according to Rabbi Meir, an Eved, once he takes the money for himself to free himself, he can't use it anymore to free himself because the master has already acquired the money automatically. And so maybe that's the chiddush. The Chachamim say not only can he free himself via others with cash, but he can also take the cash himself as long as someone gives it to him with the intent to make sure that he delivers it to his master for his freedom. Maybe that's the chiddush of the Chachamim, that he can deliver the money himself. So ihachi ema seifa. But 1 second, take a look at the second part. Bishtar yedeyachem v'lo yedei atzmo. That when it comes to shtar, he has to emancipate himself via others, and he can't receive the shtar himself. V'ha kaimelon degito v'yado boin ke'echad. And haven't we established that according to the Chachamim, the shtar and the emancipation happen simultaneously? So why shouldn't he be able to receive the shtar directly? And maybe you'll tell me that when the Chachamim say that he receives the shtar through others, it means even through others. Not only can he receive it himself with his knowledge and consent, but even if other people receive it on his behalf, unbeknownst to him, it will still work. Why? Because the chiddush being is that it's considered to be a benefit to him, and not a liability for him to be freed, and that's the chiddush. So really, basically what we're suggesting at this point is that according to the Chachamim, kesef works whether he delivers the money or whether others deliver the money. And shtar works whether he gets the shtar himself or whether others receive the shtar on his behalf. Is that what you're suggesting, says the Gemara? But that's problematic, because ihachi ne'arvinu v'nisninu b'kesef u'bishtar ben al yedei achem ben al yedei atzma. So if that's the case, that both kesef and shtar work, whether he receives it or whether others receive it on his behalf, or whether he delivers it or whether others deliver it on his behalf, then the Mishnah should have combined it and been much more concise in its language. The Mishnah should have said as follows: kesef and shtar work whether it's through him or whether it's through others. That's what the Mishnah should have said, if really that's what the Chachamim mean. So ela bekesef ben al yedei acher ben al yedei atzmo, bishtar al yedei acher v'lo al yedei atzmo, Reb Shimon ben Elazar hu. So the Gemara concludes like this. The Gemara says, in reality, this is what the Chachamim of our Mishnah are saying: that with kesef, either other people can free him unbeknownst to him, or he can deliver the money himself because he can have an independent kinyan to deliver the money for his freedom. But with shtar, this opinion in our Mishnah holds like Reb Shimon ben Elazar, who says that only others can acquire his freedom with a shtar on his behalf, but he cannot receive the shtar himself. Why? Because the Tanya, Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer, af bishtar yedei achem v'lo yedei atzmo, b'shalosh machlokos badovar. Because Reb Shimon ben Elazar says that it is sequential. When it comes to a shtar, first the shtar is delivered, and only after the shtar is delivered, the Eved goes free. If you were to give the shtar directly to the Eved, then he would not be freed, because the Adon is merely delivering the shtar to himself, because the Eved's hands are like the Adon's hands, and there's no way for the Eved to go free that way. So therefore, according to Reb Shimon ben Elazar, which is the opinion being reflected in our Mishnah, you have to deliver the shtar to a third party that is not under the dominion of the Adon, of the master. They receive it on behalf of the Eved, and then immediately afterwards the Eved goes free. That's why dafka has to be done al yedei acherim and not al yedei atzmo. So then the Gemara says v'shalosh machlokos badavar, and it's a little bit difficult to understand what those words mean. It's a three-way machlokes. Rashi has a very long explanation. I'm going to try and simplify it as much as I can. It turns out that there are two halachic issues that we're dealing with over here. The two halachic issues are, number one, is it a liability or is it an asset for an Eved Kanani to be emancipated? Okay, that's one halachic issue. And the second halachic issue is when you emancipate an Eved using a shtar, is it a sequential process or is it a simultaneous process? That does he acquire his freedom simultaneous to his taking of the shtar, or does he first take the shtar, or is the shtar first delivered and then sequentially afterwards, one moment afterwards, the emancipation occurs? There is this three-way machlokes. According to Rabbi Meir, it is a liability for an Eved to be emancipated. And therefore, Rabbi Meir says, when it comes to Kesef, you can do it even against his will, even unbeknownst to him. Why? Because Kesef is a mechanism that works, even if it's unbeknownst and it's a liability. But Shtar, and that's why it could be Al Yadei, and that's why the Kesef can be done Al Yadei Acherim, can be done via others, but the Shtar can only be done with his own knowledge, because otherwise it's a liability for him, and you cannot free it, and you cannot free him if it's a liability for him unless he's aware of it and he receives the Shtar himself. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says that, and this is the second out of the three opinions, he argues in both issues. He argues in both. Number one, he holds that it's an asset for an Eved to be freed, and therefore your norm with Kesef, you can do it al yedei acherim, you can free him via others. Other people can free him unbeknownst to him. That's an asset for him. It's beneficial for him. But when it comes to Shtar, here's where I argue. I hold that it's a sequential process, and therefore only other people can receive the Shtar in order for the Eved to go free. The third opinion is the opinion of the Chachamim who disagree with Reb Shimon ben Elazar. We agree with you, Reb Shimon ben Elazar, that it's an asset for an Eved to be freed. And therefore, when it comes to Kesef, we agree with you that either other people can do it or he can deliver the money himself. But where we disagree with you is that we hold that when it comes to a Shtar, an Eved can be freed either by himself or by other people, because we hold that the emancipation and the delivery of the Shtar happens simultaneously. And our Mishnah is only reflecting the opinions of Reb Meir and Reb Shimon ben Elazar, but not the Chachamim who are in between the two. Okay, I hope you got it. I'm sorry, it's a little bit complicated, but let us go on. Okay, now, Omar Rabba. Rabba now says, my time of Reb Shimon ben Elazar. What is Reb Shimon ben Elazar's reason for saying that it's a sequential process, that first the Shtar is delivered and only afterwards the Eved is freed? Gomar la me isha. Ma isha ad sheyotzi get l'rishus she'ena shelo, af Eved nami ad sheyotzi get l'rishus she'ena shelo. And it's the reason is because he learns it out from, we know that all the laws of emancipation are connected to the laws of divorce. And when it comes to the laws of divorce, the divorce mechanism works where the husband delivers the get to a domain that is not his. Because when I'm married to my wife, I don't own her body. So by delivering the get to her hand, I'm placing the get in a domain that is not mine, and thereby she is divorced. But when I deliver the get into the shtar shichur into the hands of the Eved, who's still my possession, I'm not fulfilling the mechanism of severance. And therefore, the Eved cannot be freed through receiving the get himself. It has to be received by others on his behalf who are not, this third party is not in my domain. And that's the only way that the Eved can be freed. So Rabba. So Rabba now asks the question, Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Eved Kanani, Mahu Shiyasa Shliach Lekabel Gitu Miyad Rabba. The question is like this: can an Eved Kanani appoint a Shaliach to receive his get and be emancipated thereby? And the basis of the question is like this. We've already established that an Eved Kanani can be freed via a third party. But is it possible that that's only true when the third party is appointed by the Adon, not by the Eved? What if the Eved specifically appoints a Shaliach and says, my Adon wants to free me, I can't get freed by receiving the shtar myself, you act as my proxy. Now, the fact that he's been appointed as my proxy, does that create a problem, or is it acceptable? And here's the two sides of the coin. So, Kevin de Gomar Lala Meisha Ki Isha, Odil Meisha Diihi Matzi Mekabelas Gita Shliach Nami Matzi Meshavia, period. Eved Diihu Lo Mekabel Gite Shliach Nami Lo Matzi Mashve. So the question is like this. On the one hand, we compare the laws of Eved to the laws of a woman getting divorced. Just like a woman can appoint a proxy to accept her get and be divorced thereby, so too we could argue that an Eved Kanani can appoint a proxy and that proxy can receive his shtar shichur. On the other hand, maybe it's different. A woman could receive the get herself, and therefore her shaliach has the same power as she does, and so therefore the shaliach works over there. But by a shtar shichur, since the Eved himself cannot receive the get to be emancipated, his appointment of a proxy will also not, that proxy will also not have any more power than the Eved Kanani himself, and therefore it won't work. So Basar Debaya Hadar Pashta, Gomar Lala Meisha Ki Isha. So after he asked the question, he said basically, it seems to me pretty pashut, says Rabbi, that just like a woman could appoint a proxy to receive her get, so too an Eved Kanani can appoint a proxy to receive his shtar shichur. However, but that creates a problem. Ve'elahada Amar Rav Huna Bereida Rav Yehoshua Hani Kohani Shluchi Derachmana Ninu. He says, and why? Disal Gadaitach Shluchi Didanin Hu Miikamidi Danu Lo Matzinun Avdinan Ve'inu Matzi Avdi. So there's a very interesting Gemara in Maseches Nedarim. The shaila in Maseches Nedarim is as follows: a Kohen working in the Beis Hamikdash offering karbanos. Whose proxy is he? Is he God's proxy, or is he the Yisrael's proxy who's offering the carbon? Now, why does this affect the laws of Nedarim? Because what if I take a neder that I'm not going to benefit from that Kohen? So if, when I bring a carbon, he's acting as my proxy, so I can't use that Kohen to bring my carbon. But if he's acting as God's proxy, he's not doing me any favors, he's doing God the favor, so then I can use him as my bringer of a carbon. That's how it's relevant to Maseches Nedarim. So what does this have to do with our discussion over here? One of the arguments that Rav Huna Bereida Rav Yeshua brought to prove that a Kohen is God's proxy, not the Yisrael's proxy, is as follows. He said, if he's the Yisrael's proxy, how could it ever be that a Kohen can do things that his sender cannot do? Can the sender walk into the Beis HaMikdash and walk into the holy place by the Mizbeach and offer karbanos? No, Yisrael is not allowed to do that. So that proves that the Kohen is not his proxy, because a proxy is limited to the same power as the sender is. So that proves that he can't be my proxy. Now, what are we saying over here? We're saying over here that the proxy of the Eved Kanani can receive the shtar shichur when the sender, the Eved Kanani himself, cannot receive the shtar shichur. So doesn't this argument of Rav Huna destroy that suggestion? Doesn't he basically say that a shaliach can have no more power than the sender? So the Gemara's answer is velo. This is still part of the question. Velo v'ha'avda di'ihu lo matzi mekabel gite v'shlich matzi mashvi. I just spoke out what the Gemara's question is. Like, how can it be that the proxy of the Eved Kanani can receive the shtar shichur when the Eved Kanani himself can't? How can he have more power than his sender? But the Gemara says velohi. Yisrael lo shaychi b'toras karbanos klal, Eved shayich begitin. The Gemara says that's not a valid comparison. He says the reason why Rav Huna's argument worked in Maseches Nedarim by Kohanim is because a Yisrael has no shaychus, he has no connection whatsoever to work in the Beis HaMikdash. There's no scenario where a Yisrael can ever act as a Kohen in the Beis HaMikdash, and it's on that basis that Rav Huna said, how could the Kohen be acting as the Yisrael's proxy if he has so much more power and ability to work in the Beis HaMikdash than the sender himself? But in a case of Eved Kanani, an Eved Kanani can't receive his own shtar shichur, but he still has the power to receive a shtar shichur on behalf of somebody else. Detanya, nirin hadvarim sheha'eved mekabel gito shel chavero miyad rabo shel chavero v'lo miyad rabo shelo. That, let's say, the scenario that's discussed in this brisa, you have two masters, each one of them has his own Eved Kanani. One master wants to free his Eved Kanani, but he can't give the shtar directly to him, so guess what? He can give the shtar to the other master's Eved Kanani, and that Eved Kanani can receive it on behalf of his friend, the other Eved Kanani. As long as they're not owned by the same master, they're owned by two separate masters, it works perfectly fine. So when we say that the Eved Kanani's proxy has the ability to receive the shtar on his behalf, it's not that this proxy has any more power than the original Eved Kanani, because an Eved Kanani also has the power to receive a shtar shichur. He just can't receive his own shtar shichur, but he could receive someone else's shtar shichur. It's not like the case of a Kohen, where a Kohen has the ability always to work in the Beis HaMikdash. Yisrael never has the ability to work in the Beis HaMikdash, and that's why the argument is made that way. But in this case, where you have two Avadim Kananim, an Eved Kanani can receive a Shtar Shichur on behalf of another Eved Kanani. So it's not an overextension of power to say that an Eved Kanani can appoint a proxy to receive the Shtar Shichur on his behalf.
So he has his own yad?
He has his own yad, just not to receive his own Shtar Shichur, but to receive another person's Shtar Shichur, perfectly fine. Let's go on. According to the Chachamim, the Eved Kanani can deliver the cash himself, provided that the money belongs to another party. Because if it belongs to him, what did we say? Mashikana Eved, Kana Rabo. As soon as he acquires it, it goes to his master. He can't use the money anymore because it's not his anymore. So Nema B'Hakam Iflagi. Let us suggest that the machlokus as to whether an Eved could use his own cash to free himself is based on the following machlokus. The Rabbi Meir Savar Ein Kinyan LaEved Below Rabo, Ve'Ein Kinyan LaIsha Below Baila. V'Rabbanan Savar Yesh Kinyan LaEved Below Rabo, V'Yesh Kinyan LaIsha Below Baila. That according to Rabbi Meir, the reason why the Eved cannot deliver the cash himself is because under no circumstances can the Eved ever receive money and have it belong to him independently of his master. But according to the Chachamim, it is possible for the Eved to be given money and for that money to belong to him independently of his master. And therefore, as long as he's given the money, he can free himself with it. And that's the machlokus. And in the same vein, they would argue about an isha as well, about a woman who receives money independently. Does that money automatically revert to her husband, or can she retain ownership independent of her husband? That's the machlokus. So Amar Rabba, Amar Rav Sheshus, no. Dekule alma ein kinyan la'eved below Rabbo, ve'ein kinyan la'isha below Baila. No. Rabba says that's not the machlokus, because everyone would agree that when no stipulation is made and money is given to an Eved Kanani or money is given to an Isha, the Adon or the husband automatically acquires the money. Everyone, both the Chachamim and Reb Meir, agree to that. V'hacha b'mayaskinan da'akni le acher mana v'amar le al menas she'en l'rabcha reshus bo. Rabbi Meir savar ki amar le kani Eved v'kani Rabbi v'chi amar le al menas lo klum ka amar le v'rabbanon savri kevin da'amar le al menas ahani le tanoi. So Rabbi says like this: the situation that we're dealing with over here is where a third party gives the Eved Kanani money and makes an explicit stipulation. And he says, I hereby give you this money on the condition that your master has no portion of this money, has no ability to acquire this money. In that case, Rabbi Meir says the stipulation is null and void. Because once the Eved takes it, like he says, he doesn't have a yad in that respect, once he takes the money for himself, it automatically reverts to the owner, and therefore whatever stipulation that the giver made is null and void. The Chachamim, however, say, while it's true that when no stipulation is made, the Eved automatically acquires it for the master, but when the stipulation is made by the giver, that's a limited kind of gift, and it is possible for the giver to prevent the owner from acquiring that money, and that's why the Rabbanan say that as long as it's given with that explicit stipulation, it's possible for the Eved to free himself with that money. However, Rebbe Lazar disagrees. The Rebbe Lazar Amar Kol Ki Haygavna Du Kol Yamalo Pligi Dekani Eved Vekani Rabbi. He says, I hold that even when that explicit stipulation is made, everyone would agree that it doesn't work and that the money reverts automatically to the master. The reason why the Chachamim hold that it works over here is because the stipulation is different. Here we're dealing with the following situation. A third party gives the Eved Kanani the money and he says, I'm giving you this money only in order that you should use it for your emancipation. That's the way the stipulation has to be made. And so what's the machlokas? Rabbi Meir savar ki amar le kani Eved v'kani Rabbi v'chi amar le almanas lo klum ka amar le. So Rabbi Meir says it doesn't work. He says it doesn't matter what stipulation you make. Once the money comes into the Eved's hand, the master automatically acquires it, so he can't use it for his emancipation. However, v'rabbanan savri l'didei nami halo kani makni le dehalo amar le ela almanasha teitze bo lecherus. And the Chachamim disagree. They say in this situation, you're not even giving the money to the Eved. You're basically saying to him, here's cash. It's not for you. It's for your emancipation. You are hereby commanded to deliver this money to the Adon so that you can emancipate yourself. So I'm not even giving it to you. In that situation, the Chachamim say that it's possible for the Eved to receive the money and it doesn't revert to the owner. It only reverts to the owner when the Eved takes possession of it for himself. But if he's not taking possession for himself, but rather using it for his emancipation, then it works, he's acting as an agent, it works perfectly fine. And that's the machlokes. So we're going to hold it here for today because the next sugya takes us to the two dots, which is a little bit too far into the next amud. So have a wonderful, wonderful day.